see this crowd. You gotta hear it. We can feel this stage vibrate between our feet, and my word, what a performance.
Hello guys, welcome to the channel. If you're here for the first time, we're going to be doing an interview with Tashi today. My name is Toolez, and speaking of, let me pull Tashi in right now, as we're going to have a little bit more of a deep dive discussion, because there's just been a lot going around in the Halo community, right? So we've had a lot of announcements going on about partnerships. We have a lot of, I'd say, a lot of angst about the frequency of tournaments, a lot of things, just a lot of questions surrounding the Halo ecosystem and the HCS partnership. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to let you come on, talk a little bit about it. But before we get into all of that, well, first of all, how are you doing? Anything that you just want to say hi to the chat and put yourself out there.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. The timing was actually perfect because I saw there was just definitely a need to put out some messaging and address a bunch of questions that have been coming up. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to do it Monday because I'm going out of town. And then you reached out and I was like, oh, this is perfect. We'll just do this. And so I'm just thankful for the opportunity to chat. And thankful everyone tuning in and, just being engaged and asking all your questions. So, I'll answer what I can. Usually I like to think an open book. So whether you talk to me at an event or on Twitter or wherever it might be, just here to answer whatever I can. So
awesome. Yeah. I guess the first thing I think is burning on everyone's question, like everyone's mind. After Kansas City, we had a really large break. 5 months. Now, obviously, there are other events that are going on in EU, like ANZ and Mexico during that break. But what was the reasoning behind having this prolonged period of where we're not really playing Halo like on a LAN stage for 5 months? What happened behind doors that kind of led to that? And if you had to go back, like, would that decision still be the same?
So that is definitely one of the core issues. I think I did a big Twitter thread or conversation about a few months ago, but that's the number one thing that we're working to solve for the second year. So the reason it came out that way is because when we were putting together the roadmap, first we wanted to start out with a full year roadmap, which is something that we've never done before and others really haven't done either. So it's really not easy. So it's a huge behemoth of a beast. And what we were trying to do is I think we had some strategies and objectives that ended up conflicting and pulling the roadmap in all these different areas. So we knew, when the game was coming out, we wanted to have a kickoff event really soon after the event. And we also knew that we wanted a world championship to roughly fall around the anniversary of the franchise every year, which touches on how we want the world championship to be a celebration every year for the franchise. And then we also worked with, pre-existing events that already had dates. So the Dream Hacks. And so we started with those things and they got locked in. And then as we're putting in the rest of the pieces and we're hearing from venues about what's available and selecting the cities, the way it all kind of came together wasn't exactly how we originally envisioned. And we just had a point where we had to make a decision. We're shipping a game. We have to lock in these things or we don't have any options and everything kind of falls apart. So we had to do it. And, I think, like I said, for next year is how, if I could go back in time to answer your question, how we would do things differently. We would, and what we're doing for next year is we're starting with all the majors and worlds first and locking those in, and then making sure that all the space in between is filled properly. The other thing we're doing is we're just condensing the roadmap a lot more. So because, again, we wanted to be there right at launch and we wanted the world championship close to the anniversary, that's an 11-month season. That's pretty unheard of. So we're just condensing it overall. So it'll feel more high octane, more events going on all the time, more online tournaments, more broadcasts. It'll go from again, 11-month season to 8 or 9, which is more typical. So a lot of the dead space that you saw and are seeing this year, we plan to correct next year. And we're also working with partner teams to run more tournaments next year too. So you'll see a lot of those kind of filling the gaps as well on top of that. So that's another thing that we're excited about. I'm trying to think if there's another point I wanted to make about roadmap. Maybe it'll come to me. Sorry, I'm forgetting.
It'll probably come back later. I guess so. Like you talked about, you're going to condense.
Does that make sense, by the way?
Yeah. So I think what generally happens, like if I'm going to regurgitate and simplify for everyone at home, essentially, there wasn't proper planning in between the events, and like you're going to try to rectify that in season 2 by planning the majors and then planning around the majors in between, where things kind of like fell dicey, right? Is that like?
Yeah, I'd say it's less proper planning, less about not properly planning between the events and more about the order in which we put everything together.
Right.
And I think we made some compromises for, some objectives that we wanted to accomplish. And I think that's the big lesson is like, no, we have to make sure that the specific cadence isn't lost. And I think before the year started, we knew like, hey, there's a pretty long dry spell here.
Right.
And I think now that we're in it, especially with, there's just a lot of critical feedback about the game right now, players wanting more content and stuff. I think it just feels a lot worse than we originally anticipated. And I think just a lot of the feedback about the game, exasperated some stuff too. So, I mean, it's where we are today. Again, we're neck deep in building out the year 2 roadmap. And so, we're sticking to the guns I just mentioned, and things are already looking a lot better than they were for year 1.
So I guess like my biggest question about that, right? Because you said like, obviously you guys knew about the big dead space. I think the super was like trying to mitigate that too a little bit, but like, is there not the flexibility like within HCS to say, hey, like we kind of messed up here. Like, can we like try to get an event going on right now, even if it's not maybe to a scale of a major? Like adding another NA regional, I think would have been very appealing to the NA pro players, and maybe could have had a little bit of a smaller scale. Or, I know that everything's about the open ecosystem, but maybe adding more of an invitational event for top pros to go to lands, just so there's something to fill out. Like, is there that concept of flexibility within the roadmap? Is that something that can be added into season 2, right? Like what's preventing the idea of just, hey, like there's not a LAN, people want a LAN, let's throw a LAN?
So there's a few things I want to touch on. One is the supers are there to hit on a couple different things. So one is they allow for regional scalability. And the idea is the super is basically an online regional. And so in North America, we were working with DreamHack to do the supers, to do the regionals, right? They did Anaheim. There was intended to be another one that was going to take the place of this upcoming super, and the dates just didn't work out. And that happens, right? Especially when, as I mentioned, we were starting with these existing events that were there. But long term, what we want to do is, and this is true for all the other regions too, is as they start to grow and mature and there's a bigger business around there, we want to have the supers flip into regionals. And so that's why they're built in such a way and they're scalable in that way, is because we wanted to make sure we had an event in every region, but it just didn't make sense for right now, with the size of the scene and where we were starting, to do 2 in every region. So we started with 1. I think NA is absolutely at a point where a second regional is warranted. In terms of flexibility, we're attempting to put on more events in this time period when we saw like, okay, this gap is actually, a big issue. And some of the stuff just fell through, which happens. There's, when you already have events locked in, a lot of venues, especially now coming out of this kind of COVID pandemic time, are getting filled up. And regardless of if we built out a year-long roadmap, it's just when you're not starting super early, it just becomes more and more difficult. So there were some things that were going to be put on and announced, and the opportunities unfortunately fell through. So We are looking to fill the void with more online tournaments, which I know is not ideal because players want to play on LAN, but should still be more competition in this kind of downtime, if you will.
Is there like, okay, so like, can you give an example of maybe something that like was planned for season 1 and had to be canceled that because of like the constraints that you were talking about? Just like people have an idea of like what was originally planned for season 1.
Yeah, so originally there was a DreamHack in I think it was in Montreal. And I'm being super transparent right now, like literally sharing the plans. And I think either the timing didn't work out, or I think it was just the timing didn't work out that we couldn't be there. But that was going to be like the second regional. So for next year, we're working to make sure there are 2 regionals for NA.
You said Montreal, huh? So like we had originally a Canadian event planned for North America.
It was on an early roadmap.
Oh, that's a shame. So when you say like timing doesn't fall through, right? I think that's a little vague for some people to like understand. Yeah. Like what specifically about the timing like doesn't fall through? Like what is the X factors that are creating like the ability for these tournaments to fall through the cracks?
Yeah, so generally you need some space between events. You can't have open events like every 3 weeks because players are then, you're cannibalizing the scene. They're going to have to decide between one or the other. And ultimately just makes both products weaker. So when timing doesn't work out, it's like, hey, we've already kind of locked in this major, or there's this other event that's been locked in. And so now when this other event comes in that we want to do, it's only available in this like 2-week time frame or this one weekend. And that's what I mean when timing doesn't work out. It's like it's too close to the other events. It would damage the entire roadmap. And also sometimes from a format perspective, like doesn't make sense. Like why would you have a regional after a major, things like that. So those are some of the things that happen when putting together a roadmap.
Right. So I think the only, like, if I was going to be the casual that steps back and looks from that broad perspective, right? Where does the idea of having too many tournaments could hurt the ecosystem, right? Like, is that more just like experience that you guys had more tournaments that one year and like you learned from that experience that like it hurt the scene? Or is that kind of like a preconceived notion that's being played into that's like maybe preventing those events from happening? I guess my biggest thing is like, what's preventing us from taking the risk of running a couple tournaments that are closer together and kind of getting the data from those couple tournaments and seeing if it did in fact like hurt people coming and cannibalizing the scene, like you said?
Yeah, ultimately, the data we have is just from prior HCS things or other events that have happened in the ecosystem that, you know, like third-party style events. Generally what we try to hit for events is like a 2 to 3 month time frame. And you know, just based on feedback we've heard over the years, like that's generally enough time for players to, you know, I'm talking specifically for like open bracket players, because if we're doing an open event, then we need to make sure that they can attend. So generally that's what we've heard is like the time frame for them to be able to like save up enough money and come to another event and take another trip. And then to your question about like why not take the risk and like gather the data, it's not a bad point, but the risk is also like really high, right? These events are super expensive. If it falls through when we have kind of good information that says, hey, this is probably not a good idea or this probably won't be successful, then I think it's not a smart risk to take, you know?
I feel that. Yeah, I think I can get with that and I understand that. It's just I think from like our perspective, right, as like viewers, it's like we really want to go to events. And I think it's been a combination of the fact that like COVID, although it's still going on, it's a very real risk, like it's less present than it was a few years ago, and people want to get back into these live events. And it's been frustrating as just a general fan of Halo not to be able to go to these events, just from like the perspective. And I think you can sympathize with that. And just to go a little bit further, I want to, like, you brought up costs, and like that's the big risk, right? The cost of running a tournament. Can you give us like a perspective of like what the cost is to run one of these tournaments? Like, how much did Raleigh or an event like KC cost HCS?
So I don't know that I can divulge specific numbers, but let me give some insights into like what it takes. You have initial like venue costs, booking the venue, internet. You have hundreds of staff, not only from our side, and we have a relatively small team, but like esports engine, which, you know, to put on a big event like that, you know, it takes an army. There's literally, I think, like over 200 people that work these events, all in. And then you have everything that goes into it, right? Your staging and sorry, I want to go back to the people. Like, the event is 3 days, but everything is booked for a week. So you have people there day one, you know, loading in all the equipment, building the stages, and then at the end, on the Monday after the event, on the Sunday, as soon as the event's over and everyone leaves, like, they are tearing down. So, you know, we can only do so many events per year, and they're also in different scales. That's why when you look at like DreamHack in Valencia, which was an awesome event, that stage is not as big and tricked out as the majors, right, in Raleigh or KC. Same with the Anaheim event, right? This was not a major, it was a regional, so we scaled down the approach. And, you know, we can't have everything at a kind of major level approach. And for us, like, we're really trying to make sure that we're doing things in a way that will allow us to do it long term. You know, I think a lot of our players in the scene have lived through the time of, like, you know, we sunsetted Halo 5 and we had this like downtime until Halo Infinite was coming out. Wasn't there a lot of events? Also, like, I was a fan before I joined 343. Like, I was there when MLG dropped Reach, and there was the kind of Halo 4, I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of a weird time in the entire scene. You had the AGL events, and then you had 343 running the like global championship, and it was just like weird dichotomy of stuff going on. Like, it's really important that we're able to do this consistently year over year, so that, you know, people can rely on Halo Esports being there. And in Halo's history, that hasn't always been the case. So, you know, that's super important for us.
Right. So, I mean, stepping on that, right, because you talk about the enormous cost, and well, the revenue flow for you guys, like, comes to like different venues, right? So you have like your sponsors that come in and give you money, but I think the biggest one that's on everyone's mind is that a percentage of each team skin in the game, and not even just team skins, like purchases period, like microtransactions in the game, go to help HCS in a little bit. Can you elaborate on, I don't know how much you can go into it, but like, can you give us a sense of scale of like what that kind of money goes to? Like, where is this money that's being brought in by microtransactions into the game being appointed to through where is it being put into at HCS?
So it doesn't quite work that way.
Okay.
From a financial perspective. It's not as like, it's not like, hey, a sponsor gave us X amount of dollars, we're going to take this X amount of dollars and put it here. Basically, the way it works is like, we're given a budget and we're giving targets that we need to hit in terms of, you know, and our primary goals are, you know, viewership, participation, engagement, monetization for our teams and our partners, and making sure they're doing well. And then like social reach and relevancy, right? So those are the main things that like we try to accomplish. And we also have revenue targets that we need to hit. And so when we hit our revenue targets, or we do well, or the scene is expanding, then it allows us to go back to the studio leadership and say, hey, Halo Esports is doing really well. Here's how we want to expand on things, or here's how we're thinking things for the future, right? Years down the road. And then, you know, because there's success, it enables us to do more and more. So that's kind of the way it works.
Okay. I mean, so jumping onto that, right? You're talking about hitting like KPIs, key performance indicators. Like right now through season 1, like, is Halo hitting those KPIs? Are we looking healthy in the eyes of 343 right now as a department in HCS?
So I'll give two answers. One is like my personal subjective answer, which if I had to score ourselves, I'd say we're like at a B in terms of like A through F, right? So B, and because, I want us to have a better roadmap for next year. I realize the gaps that we have. I want to accomplish more, right? Objectively speaking, though, when we look at the targets that we set and the metrics that were hit, like HCS has been very successful. We have destroyed our viewership targets. We have crushed the participation targets. Like by every objective measure that we set out to determine HCS success before the game came out and before HCS launched with Halo Infinite, like we have beat all of our targets. So from a studio perspective, Halo Esports has been very successful, which is great, which is great news. And it's a testament, I think, to the what the HCS team has done, because we work super hard. We have a tremendously passionate team, and everyone busts their butts to have like what I think is the best esports product that Halo has ever had. All of our partners, right? Esports Engine, DreamHack, ESL, gaming partners who, are with us every step of the way, putting on great broadcasts and events. The talent who are like super committed and great on screen and good ambassadors for the game. The players who, have some issues with the game, but generally feels like people love the gameplay, which is awesome. All the fans who watch and tune in and, collect the Twitch drops and all that stuff. Sponsors who also support the scene, and of course the partner teams who are investing in supporting these players and promoting the game and all this stuff. So as an ecosystem, when we look at again, objectively how we've done, it's been a success. But like I said, from my perspective, I want to push for more. There's stuff that we could have done better that I want to improve on for next year. We're not resting on our laurels. We're not just like, oh, things are going great, we're super successful. Like, no, there's stuff that we didn't get right that we want to get right. There's stuff that we wanted to do, but we weren't able to do. And we have more and more places to improve as the season goes on, as we discover it. So we're going to keep pushing this thing forward. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really interesting that like the indicators that you guys set before, like we've hit those, right? Which is great. I mean, like, guys, I mean, from you, like, thank you, like, for giving that context. But for us, that's like relief, right? Because I think a lot of pros, a question that they've had is like, if this isn't going well, like, will I have a career in 5 years? Like what's the long-term sustainability of HCS in the eyes of 343? And like, do you have any context as to like kind of a long-term roadmap of where 343 sees HCS? Like, can these pros depend on HCS being a program or a career opportunity in 5, 6, 7 years?
That's the plan. And, as a studio, we are in on esports. Like, we believe it. There are strong features in the game that support it, right? We have our own store. We have the ranked playlist, which features tournament settings. We're building the roadmap for next year and the years beyond already. So, the studio is committed and bought in on esports. We obviously have a lot of work to do still on the game side. And that's a huge part of also the success of the league. So the development team is busting their butts as hard as they can to address all the feedback, add in all the features and, new things that are coming down the pipe, which we're really excited about. But yeah, to answer your question, like as far as we can see, Halo Esports will continue to be a thing for Halo.
Hey, that's what I really want to hear, because like there's a lot of esports that we just saw Gears just this year like shut their doors, and it's concerning to us as a community because Gears was also having the support of Microsoft, right? So I think that's like really promising for us to hear, and I'm glad that you were able to lay that out. I want to wrap.
Well, that was.
Oh no, go ahead.
I just want to touch on that for a second, not on Gears specifically, but like a lot of what they were going through is what we went through with Halo 5, right? They had moved the development team onto another project, and for us, it just was the right time to kind of sunset Halo 5, and we did the whole Grassroots era because we knew we were building something big with Halo Infinite, and we knew we had this community that was super passionate about Halo Esports, and we wanted to continue to support it and give the players something to compete in and give the fans something to watch. And that was kind of our strategy. So I can't speak to Gears, obviously. They're their own franchise in their game, and I don't work there. But just wanted to touch on kind of the similarities that we had a few years ago.
Right, and I think I think it's promising for Gears to show that, like, hey, like, hopefully they can come back stronger, because like every esports succeeding is important for our ecosystem. That means I want to wrap back a little bit back to what you said earlier about shortening the roadmap that we have. I think a lot of people were really excited about a 12-month roadmap when it first came out, and we kind of seen the downfalls of what having a 12-month roadmap is. You talked about condensing it. Does that mean, so when you condense a roadmap, does that mean that, because I think a lot of people think of the roadmap as like a season year calendar. When we go to like an 8-month system for season 2, does that mean we're just going to have a prolonged off period between season 2 and season 3 and everything start up on the new year again? Or are we going to be kind of going like ignoring the calendar and having season 3 launch up right after season 2? And kind of even more in the context, like season 1 ends in November, like what is the time around, like the period between season 1 and season 2 in which HCS starts up official competition again?
So for us, when I say shortening the roadmap, it's really from like the first online qualifiers that feed into the major to the world championship. Like that's the kind of roadmap that I'm talking about and condensing it. I think ultimately there needs to be some sort of off season because you need to have a break. You need to make sure, I guess from our end, from a product standpoint, we need to ensure that we're ready to go up and, level up what we're trying to do for the following year. Players need a bit of a break, and, we want to make sure that they know, hey, this is when the world championship is. I can take a vacation afterwards. I can spend the holidays with my family, whatever it might be. And so we want to make sure that's clear for, the pro players competing. But I also think there just needs to be more, activity, in that kind of off season. And it won't be like, another crazy big major or anything like that, but just something for players to compete in and keep their tools sharp. And it also helps us from a perspective of like, if we have new maps we want to put in or equipment, whatever it might be, that kind of like the low-level tournament activity between seasons allows us to refine all that stuff. So I think it would be a miss if we had absolutely nothing in between the seasons.
So I guess my biggest, like, I don't even want to call it pushback because I don't think it's pushback, but if I was going to challenge that for a second, the time between Kansas City and the Super has very much felt like an off season. Like teams like Sentinels, teams like Optic aren't playing in the opens. They aren't participating in the tournament structure right now. What are we going to do in the future to kind of create an ecosystem in which pro teams want to play every week? Right now, tournaments, like it's like pro points and like $2,000, I think, for like a pro series. To me, like the first question I see when I have people come in Twitch chat, they're saying, what are they playing for when it's the open series? And the question is usually it's like, well, they're playing for pro points. There's not really a lot on stake. Is there a plan to revamp how the pro series and open series works in order to make it more appealing for the pro teams to participate in the HCS structure?
So 2 things. I would say one is the kind of roster hurricane that's been taking place since Kansas City has been, I would say, unprecedented. And this is coming from like partner teams and some players that I've talked to. Excuse me for my coughing. I just got over COVID like 2 weeks ago, but this cough just keeps lingering. So I would say the roster hurricane has stopped some teams from competing in the bigger pro series events that we had after Kansas City, which has been unfortunate. And that's a miss. Like our expectation is, especially for those bigger pro series ones where there's broadcasts and more prize money, that all of the pro teams at the top are competing in them. For the kind of weekly, 2,000 point tournaments, the main goal of those is to give really amateur and open bracket players, something to sink their teeth in every week. I've obviously like much better if all of the pros are competing in those, and some are, but we're not fully expecting, or we didn't go in fully expecting that every single week all of these teams are just going to be competing for these points, which, if you just won Kansas City or top 3, you got more points at that event than probably 2 months worth of these online tournaments. But if you're like, towards the bottom of the scene, this is a good chance for you to like earn some real points. And it's meant to like, again, give the amateur players something to sink their teeth into and compete in and week out. I think for next year, once we get all the majors in place, it'll allow us to look at the online activity that we want to place between the events and structure it in a way that there is more regular pro level competition that you're able to watch and for pros to participate in. So I would say it's not intentional, and we don't see it as a good thing that there hasn't been like a lot of pro level activity to start this split.
I guess, like, what are some solutions that you're looking into season 2? Like, do you have anything like definitive right now that you're going to say like in season 2, like this is how we're going to get pro activity up? Because right now, like from my perspective, because for me, like, obviously I help with LVT Productions, I'm a caster. And the biggest thing that I think is hurting the ecosystem from our perspective is that we throw on these weekend tournaments, but like we have a lot of teams signing up. That's great. Like we get to watch the open tournaments, but like we're missing the optic. We're missing Sentinels. Yep. We're missing like these top teams. Like there's no motivation for them to play. Like what is HCS? Like what is like something that you guys have planned for next season that can encourage them to play more? Even if it's not even like with the pro and open series, like do you have something different that you can offer the pro players that's more appetizing, even if it's not necessarily fitting within the current ecosystem?
Yeah, so I can't go into the specifics right now because we're still locking it all in. But we are working on like changes to format and the types of tournaments to get more pro play in and more just high stakes, impactful stuff that's going to be what we feel like is a better product, more exciting to watch, more exciting to want to win, and kind of means more in the roadmap.
No, I mean, I totally get that. And I think we'll see improvements in the future. I think it's like there's a lot of responsibility to be put on HCS, but also there's a lot of responsibility for like these teams to come out and participate. Like I think right now it's been kind of a dark period in Halo, and I'd want to see like these teams getting back and involved. And I think one way that happened was during the FaZe tournament, right? So they had the FaZe $50,000. You guys added $25,000 to that prize pool. Can you give us kind of an idea of like how that FaZe event happened from your perspective? Was that kind of a last moment thing, or was that something that was like in the roadmap but just wasn't announced until it basically happened?
No, that was one that came on later, and that was entirely driven by FaZe. They wanted to do a tournament. They had a sponsor on board to help fund it, and they came to us for a license and support. And we were like, this is awesome. Let's do this. Here's a good weekend in the roadmap to go do it. And, we were like, hey, let's boost the prize pool of this. And we're working on getting more of, I should say, at least one more of those types of tournaments for the rest of the roadmap. And then I think you'll see more of those next year as well from the partner teams. Maybe not the same exact format and scale, but you're going to see more regular tournament activity from the partner teams, which is really exciting. And they're also really excited to lean into Forge, which is really cool. So I think you'll see a lot of like just creativity that comes into the scene with Forge, and unique ways that we haven't seen in the past, because typically Forge and esports have interacted from a standpoint of like, we're going to put these weapons on these maps to make it more competitive, right? If you think back to Halo 3 and Reach, and also like we're going to remake these old maps or whatever. And that's been kind of how esports and Forge have interacted. And I think you're going to see that kind of open up a bit more after Forge is released. And I think the partner teams are going to be spearheading a lot of that, and our content creators and like Grassroots as well.
I'll just say, if you're a partner team, this has nothing to do with you, Tashi. You're a partner team. Bring me full real fastly. I'm gonna do my little. I'm gonna get on my pedestal, real fast. I'm gonna take full. If you're a partner team and you want to throw a phase event, LVT Productions, guys, come out. We'll throw you an event. I'm just saying. Okay. We go back. Let's get back to the interview, Tashi.
Hey, I'll double down on that.
Up.
LVT Productions, hire them to run your broadcasts. These guys are amazing. They work super hard. They know the scene. Great commentators. Community loves them. That's a win right there. So if we have partners coming to us saying, hey, who should run our broadcast production? You better believe LVT are going to be on that list we suggest.
Hey, I love to hear that. And I guess that's the other thing that I think it's not the transparency. I think that HCS and its relationships with non-partnered teams, right? So what in 2018 we had HCS Grassroots, we had other grassroots organizations. I feel as if HCS Grassroots has disappeared in the last couple of years. Like there's been no talk of HCS Grassroots. Is that still a priority for you guys over to like add people to the Grassroots program, find support through the Grassroots program? Because I think that was like an expectation for a lot of content creators and like TOs that were part of that organization to use that as a platform to spring off in Halo Infinite. And so far, we just haven't really seen anything from the HCS Grassroots.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit on that. Some of the content creators have been organizing these play dates. We've given them Twitch drops. We did an activation in Kansas City to donate to Make-A-Wish. So there has been some. And on the tournament operator side, we were working with, I think it was Europa Halo, that got some actual HCS points to use for their tournaments, which was part of the original vision for Grassroots. So I'd push back and say there hasn't been nothing. There has been some, but I think there's a lot more to do there. Grassroots is still important. It definitely had to take a back seat with HCS kind of relaunching. And that was just like the all hands on deck. This is the most important priority. We need to make sure this is like super kick ass. And I think then we were able to slowly start kind of rolling this stuff back in. I think we definitely have more ambitions for HCS Grassroots from a tournament operator perspective and also from a content creator perspective. I know I get hit up a lot that's like, hey, when are you guys open the applications again? And we want to go in, and we are planning to open up applications again this year. We might even just like bring in a few who have been like crushing it for the last year plus, however, what time frame, and then open up applications at that point as well. Kind of like what we did when we first launched HCS Grassroots. So that's the story of Grassroots. Still a priority. It just wasn't the top priority, and it just had to take a little bit of a back seat until we launched the game, launched the league, got our feet under us a bit. But I think now that we do have our feet under us and the team and all of our partners understand the product, how to operate it, are getting more and more efficient every week, it lets us layer in more things. And Grassroots is one of those things that we want to layer in.
And I will say, shout out to you for punching back. I like the idea of punching back. If I say something, you're like, I don't agree with that. I like that you're punching back on me, because I do think that the perspective of someone like me and maybe other people in the community, like maybe we just have different visions of what HCS Grassroots should be. And I think I appreciate the fact that like, hey, like you're telling me like this was our vision for it. I think that the Make-A-Wish thing was really fun at Kansas City. So I'm like excited to see more things like that happen in the future. And like you said, drops have been a big thing that have been added to the game. I mean, for every Twitch streamer, this Grassroots, and you've been even expanding drops to like other people that aren't in Grassroots. Now, is that what's the process for drops? So like, let's say you're this average person, you're starting to grow a Twitch stream, and you're like, hey, I really want to like get involved with this stuff, but it can feel like a closed door when you're first coming in for the first time. What would be your suggestion to someone who's starting up a Twitch stream, starting to get some traction on Halo once drops? Like, where would you send that person to kind of inquire about getting drops for their stream?
Yeah, I think for us, the people that get drops are, we start with like Grassroots. We start with like pro players who stream a lot and are just generally in good standing with the league. And, those are the ones that kind of get the reward, if you will, for, I know you can't see my quotes, I need to put the reward, if you will, for getting drops. So I would say if you're someone kind of new who is, you just started your stream up, maybe you've got a small viewer base and you're looking to grow it, I think I would network with other creators in the space. The Grassroots creators are like super open. They do, I think, a really great job of like including other content creators who are similar to them, right? Love the game, generally have a positive community, are interested in just doing really cool shit and furthering their stream. And when they do like big play dates and whatnot, where it's big team battle or something like that, we typically have more slots than we have Grassroots partners, and so it gets backfilled with some of these streamers, and you could be one of them, and you could get drops on your channel for doing something like that. And ultimately, like, the more of that stuff you do, then the more you're going to get noticed when HCS Grassroots applications open up again. And that's part of the stuff is what we'll look at is how active these people are in the community, if they're positively contributing to the ecosystem. And when you participate in things like play dates, or even if you're just like co-streaming HCS events and it's like good vibes, and you're adding to the ecosystem in a positive way, like, those are things that all contribute. And I think in the past, what I'll also say on top of this for Grassroots is we've not just looked at like, how many viewers do you have? It's not just like a popularity contest. There have been people who have had, significantly smaller viewer base compared to others who have gotten into the program. Obviously, like, if you have a certain level of viewership, that means you're doing things right. And you've been doing it for long enough. So that's a pretty good indicator of, you as a streamer and kind of eligibility for Grassroots. But yeah, that's what I would say and offer as advice.
I appreciate that. The one suggestion I guess I would have for you about that is maybe having an application portal for people, right? Just because like right now it feels like HCS like kind of chooses who they have ahead of time, and where like it just makes people kind of fall through the cracks, right? So like there's some big streamers that kind of want to have the drops but never knew the opportunity was there for them. So I'd say just having like a route for them to at least be like, hey, like kind of like a poke on Facebook, if you're a boomer like yourself. Am I right? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm off Facebook these days. Dude.
Yeah, I know. But like just letting people be able to say like, hey, like, I'm here, like, at least consider me.
Yeah, I think when Grassroots first launched, we definitely were kind of had it more down to a science for that cadence, because generally what we wanted to do was like open up applications for a month, close them, review, make selections, announce, open up applications again. And so it was like every 3 to 4 months you can expect the next window to open for applications. We don't want to keep the application window open 24/7 all year round, because you submit an old application, maybe your stream has changed, whatever it might be. We want to give people the opportunity to say, hey, I didn't get in this wave. That's okay. I know the next wave is in like 4 months. I'm going to grind, build up my stream. Here's what I'm going to focus on. And then I'm going to apply again. And I can go back and say, hey, HCS team, here's how I've changed. Here's what I've grown. Here's what I've done in the last 4 months. And then we get more up-to-date information as to like, why you should be selected as a Grassroots partner. So we just have been out of cycle on Grassroots for a long time, and I think we just need to get back into a good rhythm to where fans and streamers can expect and understand. And this is like what we had originally, right? You look at a story like Real Life Spartan, like he was saw the Grassroots program, wanted to be part of it, decided to stream and grinded, and he knew that, hey, this is a real opportunity that I can go for, and he went for it and he got it. And I think because we've been kind of out of cycle and focused on kind of HCS so much, we've lost that connective tissue, and that's on us for sure. And I think we just need to rebuild it. And I'm thankful that like there are a lot of streamers who are streaming and grinding Halo who are knocking on our door to try to get in. So it's awesome that it still has that kind of resonance with the streamer community. And I think once we open it back up, then hopefully that connective tissue will grow stronger and we'll get more interest.
Okay, I'm gonna step back away from that conversation for a little bit. I'm gonna move the gears towards.
Wait, can I interject with something?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
How are we doing? Is this been a good interview? I have the Twitch chat closed. But I got called out. People were like, "This is gonna be Tashi dodging every question," and I feel like I've been pretty good so far. But keep me honest, has this been decent?
I'm gonna keep it a cap, bro. I'm gonna keep it real. There's a lot of no's, but I think they're trolls. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I think you're doing pretty good. That being said, all the pro players I see talking, they're saying yes, and I think that's that's what matters. The people that are in the ecosystem. You got Talik, you got King J, you got Avature, you got I think Frosty rated us earlier, Trippy rated us. I think just about every pro's watching. Tylenol's here. If you're a pro, sound off. I mean, I'll let them know if you're
Shout
here.
out to our pros, man.
Yeah, pros build the scene. Shout out to Eli the Ninja, G1 and going places. Shout out to G1, Straight Sick, G2. I don't forget about you guys. We'll get back over there while you guys come in. But I want to go back to something you wrote earlier in when you were doing those threads. Like every month you like release something before the reach.
Before launch.
Yeah, before launch. And you made a really big emphasis about talking about 1 + 1 = 3 and finding projects that bring that in. Can you give any examples? Like, have you been able to reach that in the first season of Halo Infinite? Can you give some examples of like projects that you think really met that threshold of 1 + 1 = 3?
Yeah, I think some small examples are like Grassroots creators being picked up by partner teams. Like, I think that's been a like positive connective tissue that has resulted in that. And I think you'll start to see more with I think Forge, and that kind of tips off our philosophy. Like, we don't see the partner teams as just focused on like core 4v4 HCS arena. We think they can offer a lot more to the ecosystem, and they want to offer a lot more to the ecosystem, and we think the game can offer a lot more to them as well. And so that kind of alludes to how we see the 1 + 1 = 3 kind of philosophy playing out.
I feel that. You talked about like 4v4 is the HCS focus, right? I think everyone is like has it on the back of their mind. Like we want to have more than just 4v4 in the ranked sense, right? So I think there's been there's a big, huge.
Did you say in the ranked sense?
Yeah, like having like a
playlist,
like a 2v2 circuit, right? Like, so even like we ran a 2v2 circuit for people for a long time. People are really interested in FFAs. Like, if I have to go another day and see Anthony posting like a horny tweet talking about like wanting to play FFAs, you know what I'm saying? Like I can't do it so much. So for everyone on Twitter who follows Anthony, like what is the process? What's the pipeline between HCS and 343 when bringing in ranked playlists? Like, do you guys have a lot of influence on what can be ranked, or like what's the current situation on why there's only one ranked playlist?
So our team doesn't control the playlists or what playlists there are. We definitely help influence, and we provide feedback from the community as to what they want to see. But the multiplayer team, drives that, and they're obviously paying attention to all that as well. The competitive insights team, formerly known as the pro team, they're actively playtesting new kind of ranked content to go in. So things are in motion. There's nothing I can like confirm. I certainly can't put a date on anything like that right now, but things are in motion to add more ranked stuff to the game.
I'm gonna be on once again, it's not really that big like a question. I'm going to go on my suggestion box for a second, Tashi.
Okay, go ahead, step up.
So I come from the Yu-Gi-Oh community before I'm counting myself as a major dork in high school. I played Yu-Gi-Oh in high school.
Rest in peace to was it the founder?
To Takahashi. Unfortunately, he died.
Yeah.
It's really sad. But I come from the trading guard community. And one thing that's really big in TCGs is the side events at the side events. And that's one thing that I think that Halo could do a little bit better. It's like we have the FFA, right? But in TCGs, what they do is they have side events that are on smaller scales. So they have like a station, and then you have like a 2v2. So let's say it's 2v2. You'd have 2v2 until like you would wait until like 16 teams signed up. Then you would run like a 16 team bracket, and it would be like single elimination, like best of ones, like very small tournaments, but you could get like in and out and play. Like, is there, I guess, with side events at Halo? Because right now, I feel like you go, you play in the open bracket. If you're bad like me, you get DFR'd. You get really sad about it, and then you have to wait a whole day to like play in the FFA. And then if you're really bad, like if you got DFR'd in the open bracket, you're probably gonna like lose in the first round of the FFA. So it's not a lot of opportunity to play at the venues right now. I know there was more of a push to do like open stations, but like the culture with open stations is like run money eights, and if you're not that good of a player, like you're probably not going to be like playing money eights with people at a venue. Like is there a plan to revamp like side events in season 2?
I would say there's not a firm plan right now. I think our priority is standing up FFA more. We want to work with the development team to get the observer mode up to snuff, but FFA was kind of our big investment in the side event. We have like the FFA finals at the Worlds in Seattle. We have like actually a really dope FFA trophy that I can't wait to share. So FFA was like our big bet, and I agree it hasn't been as. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad we have the weekly tournaments up and running, and I'm glad that we have the side events at the things. And I think they've been awesome, and it seems like players like them and appreciate it. So I'm very glad they're there. I would like to push that further. And then I think you're right, and this is something I've also noticed that like fighting game events is how important those like side events are. And I think once we get the FFA kind of to a better place, then I would love to add in more different side events. And I actually think there's, now that I think about it, and I'm thinking out loud in real time, maybe there's an opportunity for our partner teams to do some cool stuff at their booths to support like the side events, right? It's like Sentinels often have a booth. I think they had in Raleigh, you can like come up and play, and they had some cool 2v2 things. So maybe there's a world where they can do some side events. I think that would bring a lot of foot traffic and energy and excitement to their booth, and they can do jersey giveaways or whatever it might be. So yeah,
I'm with that. I think that'd be actually really cool for any of the side.
There's teams. 1 + 1 = 3.
That is a 1
side
+ 1 = 3.
Partner teams, boom.
I guess that's the other thing is at the venues, like we've seen some like I became a Space Station. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I was a Space Station gaming fan before everything, but their outreach at events has been incredible, right? They come, they have really good merch. They make like at Kansas City, they had a hoodie that was made for Kansas City that had like an HCS patch on it. It's the sickest thing ever. You go buy one.
It's clean.
Right away.
Go buy one.
But we haven't seen that from every partner team, and I guess like what is the expectation of like a partner team when it comes to these events? Like, because to me, from the outside looking in, it should have been an expectation for every partner team to be at an event and have a venue. Like, I really want to go buy G2 merch. I can't buy G2 merch. They're from EU. It's hard to buy G2 merch in America. Like, they're a German organization. I want to go to like an HCS event and get like merch. Like, what is HCS doing to like hold partner teams kind of accountable to like showing up and like interacting with the fan base?
Yeah, it's actually crazy that you brought this up, because I was doing some thinking about that today on my flight, literally about this very topic. So our approach thus far has been give partner teams an opportunity that seems so good that they'd be foolish to pass up on. And I also say it's different for each team. Some teams are based in the States. It's a lot easier for them to get a booth going. Others, like you mentioned, G2 in Germany, like it's not easy for them. And they're an organization who, hey, we're going to do it right or we're not going to do it. And I would say not all have been like familiar with the Halo community before, which is exciting because they're new and they're bringing something new to the table, but they're still trying to get their feet in, get a solid roster under them. So there's some acclimation, I think, that's been going on. But I think you're going to see more and more booths, hopefully at events. From an opportunity perspective, we don't charge floor space to teams. We don't charge fees for if they sell merch. We also, if they don't have a booth, they're able to sell their merch in our booth, which like in our merch booth, and some of the teams have taken advantage of. I think you saw like the E United hoodie was in KC in our booth, and we don't take any fees off of that too. So, we are actively pushing, and the teams are interested and they want to do it. It's just not as easy for all of them. And I think, again, it goes back to sustainability. Is like, we don't want to like force teams into a position where they're spending upwards of tens of thousands of dollars to have a booth, fly out a staff, and it's a big expense. So they have to ensure that it makes sense on their end too, and we're trying to do everything we can to make sure it makes sense for them. But ultimately, like, we're trying to make sure everything we do is like just makes good business sense. So that's why I say, like, we're trying to give teams as many opportunities as possible so that they'd be like foolish not to kind of take the opportunity. Like, that's been a lot of our approach, is like, hey, we're not going to charge you anything. We charge for like setting up the trusts and the hard costs, internet and lighting, because we have to, like, that money has to come from somewhere, but we don't charge any fees or anything like that. So the teams that have taken advantage of it, like Space Station, it's been really successful for them, and I think you're going to continue to see them at events. And I mean, you mentioned it, but like, got to give huge shout out to Space Station, because the roster has struggled. I'm not trying to call out Tylenol or anybody. The results are kind of there.
I can call Tylenol out, bro. Don't worry. Tylenol get better.
Tylenol's a beast, dude. This guy's got long-term future in HCS. But it's been really impressive to see what they've been able to do without a winning roster. They've built a huge fan base. Their merch, as far as we know, sells well. And when that roster comes around and starts winning, if they do, like, look out. Space Station are like a powerhouse in Halo, which is awesome. So, that's our approach philosophically. And I think, generally speaking, we want partner teams to get more and more involved in the ecosystem, and we're trying to structure the deal and the opportunities in a way that makes financial sense for them.
I actually, like, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna come back to that eventually when we get into our HCS partnership program, because I want to, like, when we move to that, I want to like be on that, if that makes sense. So I want to go through
and focus on it.
Yeah, we'll focus on that when the time comes. Before that, I want to go to a question that I had like many pro players ask me.
Cool.
They said Faceit sent them a survey, or like there was a survey that was sent out, essentially saying, hey, like, what changes do you want to see made to the scene? And the general
tweeted about this.
Yeah, the general consensus is that nothing happened. Like, it's been 5 months. They haven't heard any feedback. Like, what was going on with those surveys? What's the process? Like, what's going to happen? Like, how do pros get the feedback that they want? Because I think right now, Mangler, no one wanted the Mangler to be touched like the way it was. I understand that's not your department or whatever, but it just makes us feel like we don't have the voice. And I think players want to have a voice. So what's going on with the surveys? What can change in the future to make sure that players kind of feel more heard?
Yeah, I would say for us, I'm glad we did the surveys. We got good feedback. I don't feel good that there hasn't been, like, we weren't able to close the loop. So we weren't able to communicate back out, hey, this is what you said, this is what we're doing about it. And then we went and did those things. I think, and I have to give shout out to Lucid, who like stopped me. I think it was in KC, and was just like, hey, you guys need to communicate about this stuff in the surveys. So shout out to Tommy. But yeah, I think why it hasn't happened is, the results are out there for like, it's been public for how many like updates we've been putting out for the game, and the development team has just been working as hard as they can to get as many updates as they can out, and we need to do more here. Like, obviously, like, the customers and the community are saying, hey, we want more updates, we want more things, and we just haven't been able to like deliver to the level that we want to just yet. And it's not because the feedback is falling on deaf ears, or it's not important for anyone. We just haven't been able to act on it as fast as we would have liked to. So the Sandbox team and the multiplayer team are awesome. They're really great to work with. We do have all the feedback collected. We are talking to them about it. They are aware, and it's just a matter of we just have a ton of work that is still being done and needs to be done, and to get these updates out. And that's been the story. So obviously it's disappointing, and fans want more. They've made that very clear. Players want more, and yeah, we just need to put our heads down and deliver on it. And I think the hit that I'll take is we haven't done a good job, and I haven't done a good job just communicating back out to the players and the broader community about what's been happening with this feedback, where is it at, because we understand how important it is to close the loop. And what we don't want, and will probably happen, unfortunately, is players will get another survey down the road and it'll be like, the first one did nothing. Why the hell am I going to fill this one out? So we need to rebuild that trust again.
I guess like right now with like how you talked about that, I see there being a large responsibility on the HCS team from that, like from the relationship that you're talking about, right? Because you guys send out the survey, you receive the surveys, and you send it to the multiplayer team, right? So like to me, it's like, why is the HCS team being acted as like a middleman right here? Like what, like can pros have access, like have a fireside talk with like the multiplayer team and like the player, like the part of 343 that makes those decisions, right? Because I don't necessarily think it's like your responsibility at HCS to like be like, okay, like we need to make all these changes to the multiplayer. The pros are saying this. Like, how can pros have better access to the multiplayer team and like other divisions at 343? Because right now everything runs through you guys at HCS. Is there an opportunity for pros to have access to other departments at 343?
Yeah, I would say, again, I'll push back on some of this. I don't think everything runs through us. The process is basically there's tons of different data that's collected. So we collect data through the surveys, community team collects data. We have an insights team that collects telemetry from the game so they can see, hey, in the ranked playlist at this level, here's what's happening to the battle rifle. So there's all these like data points. And then that is delivered to the designers and the engineers and the people who make the game. And, they make decisions and we work with them on prioritizing everything. Like, hey, this is actually a really big issue according to our players. Or, hey, this one is not as high priority. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not like the Mangler. And then, they come up with the solutions to best address all of the feedback. So that's the process. We just need to deliver on it. So I don't necessarily think that, pros jumping on a call with designers is the most fruitful thing. We've actually done that in the past. I know some of the pros who've been around for a while have been on calls with our designers and big group calls, and you can ask them for their opinion, and I would agree it hasn't been the most fruitful. And so after that, we started moving to surveys, which I think surveys are a lot better. And we just need to close the loop on the game side. So I think the process is good. We just need to deliver on it.
You know what? Once again, thanks for pushing back, bro. I appreciate it. Keep me in check for sure. I just have like a couple straight questions before we end up going into our next segment. One thing that I don't think is talked about, it was talked about a lot when it was announced, but I think it's kind of fallen since, is the Lat AM community. There is no, like, other than Mexico, which Mexico is a big region, like shout out to them, but there was a lot of pro players who had to move to Mexico to play, right? And like a lot of Colombian talent that wasn't able to compete in this version of HCS. Is there a plan to add the rest of the Latin American region to HCS, allow them to compete? I know that ping was the main issue that was sorted when it was talking about Mexico. Is that still the case? Like, do we feel comfortable with adding other regions to HCS?
The short answer is like, we want to. It's not our goal to like keep people out of competing, especially when they were regions that competed in the past. When we did it for Halo 5, it wasn't in a sustainable way. The amount of players was super small. It didn't make sense for the investment that was going in. Ping was an issue. Language was an issue, especially when you bring in Brazil. And it just wasn't a good product. And we decided for year one to start with Mexico and focus on that, and then, grow that over time. So we know it's been challenging. We know there were players who are living on the outside who you know, they were like, hey, we're missing the first year of Halo Infinite. We've been waiting forever for this game. So like, we know it sucks. And we don't take that lightly, excuse me. And our goal isn't to shrink the scene. So we just need to do it in a way that is long-term sustainable and makes sense. Like, you know, we have a philosophy that we always try to abide by, which is do it right or don't do it at all. And so when we want to go into these other regions, we want to make sure that we're doing it right.
Right. That's fair. Like, I get it. I just like, it has to be hard to be like the player from Colombia, right? Because we had a lot of Colombian talent in Halo 5 that is just like not able to compete. And I think it's like hurting the Mexico region right now because like honestly, the Mexico region should be better than it is. Like, I think there's a lot of talent that's just like not there and not participating. I mean, like, we had like multiple players like fly and have to move to Mexico, which is like, to me, like, if someone told me that I have to move from America to like Canada to go compete in something, like, to me that would be like unacceptable. But I understand the reasons, right? I get it. It's just like, I really hope that that can change and that we can add Colombia soon and like all the other portions in Latin AM, because like, not every player, like, it's a means of opportunity, right? Like, if you don't have the opportunity to move to Mexico, you're not competing, and like, you don't even have the chance to show that opportunity. So like, you know, just to get on my soapbox for LATAM real fast, I want to make sure that like, hopefully it gets added in the future. I get the perspective. Hopefully it can make sense in the future for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, Colombia has always been a strong Halo region, so you know, we want to add them in the future for sure.
All right. Is there going to be an international major next year? This is my one gotcha question, because I really want there to be an international major. I don't think it's a
gotcha. So here, in the spirit of transparency, I will offer some insights into planning for year one. Kansas City originally, Mexico major.
Ooh.
And COVID made it not a good idea to do that. So we decided to say, hey, we're going to keep year one everything in in United States. But the ambition and the goal is to add international majors each year. So we are looking at one for next year. I can't confirm right now because we're still like locking in venues and dates and partners and all this stuff. So it's not in the bag, but that is what we want to do.
I feel that. Hey, at least there was a plan for one. I really want there to be a major overseas or something.
I'm with you. We did it in the UK with Gfinity back in 2018, and that event was awesome.
Yeah, I think France would be great, especially like the amount of French players there are right now.
Dude, you're not wrong. I actually, there was a French Halo World Championship tournament that I got to go and help run, and it was awesome. So we did it with the ESL French team, and I'm with you. I think, you know, I should have talked about this more on Twitter, but like Valencia was awesome. Like, I'm upset that like 2 days after, the story of the community became like all these partner teams or all these teams that wanted to be partners not getting in, which I understand why teams are upset and why the community is upset. But like, Valencia was awesome. It beat our viewership targets. That is the most viewed kind of European only event there's ever been. It may have even beat the viewership for that 2018 Halo 5 event where you had like, I think Tox won in the end. They beat Splice. So Valencia was awesome. The level of competition there is better than it ever has been. So like, I just want to take a moment to recognize like Valencia is great. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody who went out and competed. That was the first event we did really outside the UK, which was scary because most of the players are in the UK. But you're right, a Paris event would be pretty sick.
Yeah, Paris, I'm with it. I'm going to say right now, I'm going to call it for this first segment. I'm going to say, guys, we're going to go to a 5-minute break because Tashi, you've been talking for an hour. I want to let you have a second, like, like collect yourself and everything. We're going to take a little bit of a break. You know, in the meantime, you know, you guys are on LVT. We're going to run some ads. If you don't want to see ads, sub to the channel. We're going to be right back, like 3 minutes, and we'll be back, you know. And before everyone says I'm giving Tashi a break, I have to go to the bathroom. That's why we're taking a break. So, hey, we'll be back. We'll have more questions. Watch some ads. Make us some money. You know, we appreciate it. Sub to the channel if you can. Hello, guys. We're back. I just want to give it a quick shout out. Hey, Tashi, thank you for coming out. Thank you guys for coming and watching. Hopefully, we're able to answer the questions that you guys want. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is an interview with Tashi. My name is Toolez. I'm a caster here for the LVT Productions crew, part of the leadership program here as well. And we're doing this interview with Tashi. We just got done with our first half. We're going to continue on to the second half. We're going to bring Tashi in right now to come talk for a second. But Tashi, before we go into partnership, because that's what needs to happen, I asked Spartan. I was like, Spartan, I know you've been wanting to ask your questions. His big question that he wants to get answered, he's like, why hasn't the mangler been removed? And he said, he says, I have the perfect solution. Let's just put the sidekick where the mangler is right now, and it will solve all the problems in his opinion. Now, are you with that? You know, are you with Spartan's? Spartan wants to add the sidekick, which I will say, very big fan of, because the sidekick looks sick. I have some sidekick skins that I want to be able to see in game, and right now,
the new
only one map to see it. Come on, man. Like I want to be able to see it, but like, what's going on with the mangler? What's going on with this? Like, can we get the sidekick in for it? Like, how do we make that happen?
Yeah, so we made a couple tweaks to mangler. It obviously didn't push the needle far enough because players are like, well, we're going to keep GAing it because it's not really balanced yet. So there's more work to be done on the mangler. Development team is aware. And on the note of sidekick, like, I don't have a horse in the race. Like, my horse is whatever makes players happy and keeps people. Again, my goals are viewership. My goals are participation, engagement, and so on. Like, none of our goals are like make Tashi happy. So, yeah, well, it sounds like a good suggestion to me. I pass it along to the development team, and we'll see what they say. But yeah, sounds like a good suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I guess the one thing I think that is like kind of frustrating for a lot of people out here is that like that there's not the flexibility for HCS just to make those decisions, because back in the day, right, it's like MLG, if there was something wrong, like MLG was a separate playlist, it had nothing to do with like Bungie, right? So they could just like make those decisions single-handedly, like fix maps. That hasn't really been the case as of yet. Like, do you
don't
ever
want that though?
You do want that, or you don't?
No. I think that's a bad thing.
Oh, okay. Can you elaborate as to why you think that would be like a bad thing? Because
our team is not equipped to develop the game the way it needs to be, like a AAA game and a big esport. Like, what other big esport do you see has something like that? Like, I don't think there are any. And I think that was done out of necessity back in the day, not because, hey, this is the ideal thing to do. So the fact that like the development team and everyone is kind of bought in on supporting esports and ranked playlists is the same as what you play in HCS, like all of those are really, really great things for the long-term success of the game and HCS. So like, I think everyone would admit we just need to do more and a better job. But from like a philosophical standpoint, like players and fans do not want like the HCS team to just have like total control over the stuff. Like, we are equipped to like run a league and manage partners and like put on events and have a great entertainment product. Like, we are not the development team. Like, you know, the way it's set up now is the right way, and I think we just need to like execute on it. So that's what I'll say on that. Like, you don't want it to be splintered off that way. And like, yeah, maybe short term it means like, oh, you know, this happens instead of that, or maybe that doesn't even happen. I don't think that's a guarantee that anything happens. But I think long term I think it's just bad for the entire ecosystem, the game ecosystem, HCS ecosystem. I think it's just bad.
Right. I guess like a lot of people don't see the difference between like HCS and like the competitive insights team, right? Because that's like the competitive insights team's job, right? Is to like come up with the settings and push them to like the multiplayer team. I honestly, I don't work
very closely on that.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
yeah, I don't. So, you know, guys, I'm giving my perspective. You know what
no,
it is?
They work very closely. I know there are a lot of times competitive insights team have done like, hey, you know, the first hill should go here, and you know, we should put a weapon there and whatnot. So there's a close collaboration. There's competitive insights team does a lot of play testing. They, you know, they're awesome. They're like a well-oiled machine at this point. So yeah, I think structurally the relationships and how it works is the way it needs to be. I think we need to execute it.
Hey, I feel that.
And also, I just saw my DMs. Spartan the Dog, fantastic interview, Smart. Appreciate you doing this. Spartan the Dog, I appreciate you saying that, bro. Much love. Again, like I said in my tweet months ago, dude, nothing but love. I just need you to chill out sometimes, man. You're just like all over my Twitter feed is Spartan the Dog. It's like let's take it down a couple notches and we can work together. But I understand where the frustration comes from. I don't disagree with it.
I was gonna say we could set up like a boxing match, a solid creator clash. We could do like Halo Clash. You and Spartan going at it. I think that'd be sick.
I don't know why me and Spartan. I feel like there might be more interesting people for Spartan to fight. No,
I feel that. I just think
I don't want to fight anyone, bro.
You don't want to fight. You're a peace lover. I got it.
I set up the fights. Maybe we make that's our side event.
Okay, I feel that. One last thing before we move on, because Druck keeps spamming it, and I know it's not your responsibility. I know you want it. He's talking about champ ranks. Like, where are champ ranks? Are they going to come to HCS?
Come to HCS?
Or like, you know, just like
the ranked playlist?
Yeah. And, you know, I consider ranked HCS. You know what I'm saying?
I'm opening up a tab right now. I have to see what we've said in the past about champion rank, because I think we have talked about that.
Well, bring it in, baby, because there's nothing like seeing like 108 next to your name. Champ rank is like maximum dopamine in this game, or I should say like back in Halo 5. So champ rank.
I don't disagree.
Please,
I liked it.
I know that like 90% of our chat will never experience what it's like to get a champ rank, so you know it doesn't really matter to them, but it is like
something
pure
to
dopamine.
Strive for.
Something to strive for, exactly.
Where do you stand on the? Uni's in the chat.
I don't know. Someone said Uni said yes. I don't want to like
Okay.
Get you
If
caught up.
Uni's not in the chat confirming that, then I'm not gonna touch this.
I gotcha. I'll go look up Uni for you. See if he said anything.
I'm pretty sure we said something about it on Waypoint. Ultimately, I agree. I was gonna ask where, and maybe the chat can enter. I'm gonna open up the chat because I want to see what people say. Where does everyone sit on the 1 to 50 versus?
Don't do 1 to 50, please. For the love of God, don't do 1 to 50.
Look, again, this is not my decision, but there's a lot of people for years and years have been saying, give us 1 to 50. So where does everyone stand?
A lot of 1 to 50s. And this is why I say you can't really listen to the masses, because there's a lot of 1 to 50s in there. It's not the way. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. 1 to 50 is not the way. It's not fun.
Well, a lot of 1 to 50s.
A lot of 1 to 50s. I will say very resounding 1 to 50.
Hunter JJX 1 to 50 is bad.
Hey, there you go. Hunter knows what's up. Hunter knows what's up.
This might be a good, you know what we need in the scene? We need we need our version of the flank.
Yeah.
And
wait 1 second, Tashi. When you say that, all these pros are here listening. I will do this any day with you. If you guys want to do a flank,
yes,
whatever, I will talk to all the pros. You want to get something off your mind, Spartan? You can come on next. You can shit talk E United all you want. I will be there for it. You can come on. No comment from Tashi. I will let you have the platform to do that if you want to do that. That goes with any pros. If you want to get something off your mind, I'm here. We can do it on LVT. No problems. Get it on up. I would love, that's the one thing I really do want for the Halo community, is to have a flank-esque sort of thing.
The flank is awesome, dude. And shout out to Zuma. He has a specific personality. He has his own vibe to the chat. The flank is awesome.
I'm going to put a poll in chat. Chat, do you think we should have 1 to 50?
Okay, and I will just say the results of this poll, or what I comment on this, has absolutely no bearing on what is actually going to happen.
There we go. I'm going to put it up for 5 minutes. We'll come back to it. That being said, we went off the rails for a little bit. We're going to get back.
Okay.
One thing that you said that was really interesting to me when we're talking about the team boosts and how they're setting up.
Yeah.
Is you talked about how a lot of teams are new to Halo. This is their first introduction to it. They're in the partnership program. So I guess to me, I see that and I'm like, okay, well, there's organizations like the Kansas City Pioneers, for example, who are not new to Halo. They invested in Halo 5 when nothing was going on. They picked up a team, gave them a salary, put in a lot of effort. I think I've made a lot of community outreach, and we got news that they got rejected the partnership for season 2. Why is that the case? Why did the Kansas City Pioneers get rejected for season 2?
So I'll touch on as much as I can, but also out of respect for KCP, I literally have a call with them tomorrow where I'm going to have this conversation. So I don't want to just live on Twitch. Here you go. Here's the meeting. So a few things what I'll say is, with the partnership program, again, it's really critical for us that we take a slow and steady approach. We think it's a big mistake if we suddenly overnight add 10 to 12 teams, and we've doubled how many teams are in. And, now we have basically to split up the pie even smaller. And we have more on the HCS team to try to scale and manage, and doesn't necessarily make sense. So we wanted to take a slow and steady approach. We also didn't have a quota that we were trying to hit. So we weren't saying it's got to be 2 teams or whatever, and we're going to find 2 no matter what, whatever it might be. We were going to take the teams that we felt like were the best fits. So there were only a certain amount of slots left. There were a few dozen teams that applied, which means the vast majority of them were going to get denied. And it's not because they weren't great teams. And it's not because, they didn't do amazing things in the community. It's not for any of those reasons. There were a number of teams that probably could have, or were close to the same level, and ultimately, and I told this to the teams when we talked to them, it's a very difficult decision for us. We were basically splitting hairs at that point to make the final decision of who got in and who didn't. And we knew, it was a hard decision that was going to disappoint a lot of potential partners and a lot of fans. And we did not take it lightly. This was like a multi-month process, and if you ask some of the teams, they felt like we took too long, but it was really important. And the reason KCP didn't get in is because we felt there were other teams that we had selected that were just better fits for the partnership and the franchise and where we saw things going long term. So again, it's not because KCP aren't an awesome organization. It's not because they haven't done great things. And I also want to make sure it's clear that like the roster or the players had no impact. So I don't want this to reflect poorly on Druck or Manny or any of those guys. Like, they're awesome. I hope they're not taking this as like, oh, HCS thinks we suck and that's why KCP didn't get in. Like, it has nothing to do. Like, you guys are awesome. Like, you had no kind of impact positive, obviously, because rosters change all the time and we're in the middle of a roster hurricane. So I think it'd be foolish for us to base it on the current roster. But yeah, ultimately, that went into the decision. And from an abstract standpoint, the partnership program is it's not a rewards program. It's not hey, I did ABC, therefore I get XYZ. And again, I'm talking abstractly. I'm not saying this doesn't apply to KCP or any of the teams. Don't make that leap of logic. I'm talking very abstractly. Like, that's not how we look at the program. The program is a mutually beneficial relationship between the teams and 343 Industries, right? They scratch our back, we scratch their back. And we need to look at it that way. And we can't get into the business of, well, look at all the some of those things apply and obviously matter and they had an impact. But it's not a strict one-to-one. They did these things, so therefore they deserve those things. Like, that's not how this works. And I think when I see a lot of the feedback from the community about the decision, there is it feels like, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but it feels like some of that is playing a factor into the feedback that we're getting, which is just like, they deserved it, they earned this and that. And again, like, they're a great team. They just got edged out by other teams we thought were a better fit. So again, like, we have talked to KCP a number of times. Like, I spoke to them a bunch when we were at the LAN. The LAN was awesome. Like, I hope they stay in Halo. I understand, like, obviously makes things harder for them now, but and again, it was a really tough decision for us, but that was what kind of went into all of it and how we think about it.
Okay, so like, let's not even let's jump off KCP a little bit and talk about what the key factors that you were looking for in a team coming to season 2. Like, what made the other teams more appealing than a roster like KCP? Or I shouldn't say roster, an organization like KCP.
Yeah. So I have to unfortunately give a vague answer here because there's long-term stuff that are in the works that we can't talk about. And I think once they get kind of released and you see the fruition of it, then it'll become more clear. But generally, for the franchise, we just felt like teams were a better fit in how they were set up, the different components of their organization, their track record in Halo or other games. And again, this isn't saying like it's really hard to not think of it's really hard to not separate. Like, there's nuance here. Like, just because KCP doesn't get in doesn't mean that all the things I'm saying are not true for them. It's a matter of and all the other teams. I know we're talking about KCP a lot, but there were a lot of other really good teams, awesome teams that did not get in. And it doesn't mean we don't think they're awesome. It doesn't mean we're not grateful for their investment in Halo. There's just nuance to all of this. And the same thing happened with the HCS Grassroots program. Like, we had committed to 3 or 4 creators per wave, and hundreds would apply and hundreds would get denied. And it's not because, hey, we don't think it's not because you didn't get in, so therefore we think you suck. It's you just got edged out for people who we thought were a better fit. So, it's really difficult. I understand it's difficult for the community, and a lot of people feeling like, it's a slap in the face. But again, we had to take a slow and steady approach. We can't bring on, a ton of teams at once, and it's really important that if you're in the partnership program, you are well taken care of before we expand further. So hopefully I answered your question.
Right. I think I want to touch on something that you said for a little bit about it being symbiotic, right? It's about you guys helping the organization and the organization also helping back to HCS. And I think there's I also want to go back to the rewards thing, because I think a lot of people are going to be like spamming like Elshi right now. And I think they're kind of missing the nuance of what you're saying, of the idea that like it's not about necessarily the team getting in because they did because they did ABC, like they deserve XYZ, like you said. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I have a feeling that like you're sitting here and you're like, I know the teams that are going to be added, and like a lot of your guys' like question marks are going to be answered when the team gets announced. Is that kind of like the case right now? Is it like, are you kind of sitting here being like, I know what's coming and you guys aren't ready for what's coming? Like, is it like that big of a deal of the teams that you've added in season 2?
I think the teams that we have selected, and we're not ready to announce yet, we're going through contracts. So things are still getting finalized. Like, again, all like you saw the basically the breaking news, right? Like I sent an email, teams started tweeting. Like that could not be more transparent with where things are at in the process. So but yeah, we're absolutely thrilled about the teams that we've selected. We think that players and fans will love them. And we really hope that everyone has an open mind and welcomes them to the ecosystem and to the partnership program, and is there to hopefully support them in their roster and everything that they are going to contribute to Halo. I imagine there will still be, and this will always be the case, I feel like, I imagine there will still be some people who are just like, this was an L, you still should have brought in XYZ team. But we are, very thrilled about the teams that we've selected.
I guess the one thing when it comes to, because like you said, there's like transparency behind the decision. You sent out an email. I think there was a lot of the storm could have been mitigated maybe if you, like, not even you, if HCS had said ahead, it's like, hey, we're gonna send the teams that didn't make it, like we're gonna tweet out real fast, like, hey, we're gonna let these teams know that they didn't make it, so expect to see a lot of like teams being disappointed in the next like couple days. I think that might have like helped a little bit, which I think that's the transparency that kind of people want right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think if I could go back in time, I would have done it differently. I think we would have messaged it differently. I think we also, like, there was a lot of timing pressure on us too because of this current roster situation. Like, we were hearing behind closed doors, like, hey, teams need to know if they're in or not, because they're like holding on to players and stopping all of these like negotiations with rosters. And we've already seen the impact that that's been having, where teams haven't been like competing in tournaments, and we were just like, okay, we need to make our final decisions and communicate them right away. So if I can go back in time, definitely would have, I think, done things differently. So that's a good learning for me and our team for the future.
I think that's a great point that I want to kind of touch on, and it might be coming out of left field a little bit, but there's a relationship between HCS and the teams that are coming in, right? And you guys have your contracts, you have your long-term stability plans, but there's not necessarily that same contract between HCS and the players. Like you said, like teams are holding on to players. To me, that kind of sounds like a red flag. Like, I don't think it's a great look for the scene for teams to hold players like quote unquote hostage, or to create unobtainable buyouts where like no team can rightfully like pay like $300,000-$400,000 in some reports to like buy out a player. I don't think Halo's like kind of in that space right now where we can afford to have $400,000 buyouts. Is there leverage that HCS has that can advocate for players to make sure that these situations don't happen, that we stop the absurd buyouts that some of these players have based on the leverage that you guys have in the partnership program? What can HCS do to better advocate for the players that are part of partner teams?
Yeah, I think for us, we see it as like something that you can't really be 1 foot in, 1 foot out of. And, if we're going to be fully involved in, basically what you're talking about is like the players' rights in some way, then that's another big part of the program that we are adding in, layering in, and making sure that we are doing right. And we've taken an approach of keeping an eye on things, but we don't and can't get too involved in all that. So that's been our approach so far, and we're open to hearing if that's a bad thing or that's a good thing. And we talk to the teams and players that reach out. I encourage players to like keep me in the know about things that might not be fair or whatever it might be. Like, I'm not saying I can just like do something right away, but it's just good information that we can use to make decisions going forward. So we've largely been like hands off in terms of the roster stuff. And I think to a certain extent, like as a league, we kind of need to be, to make sure that we're not colluding in any way or whatever it might be, right? Or even perception of that. So that's been our approach. We're open to taking feedback, and if it's the right one or wrong one, or we need to evolve.
So I guess the other point to that, like, I get where you're coming from. I guess, like, can you make a commitment to, like, at least, like, let's say, like, the players came up tomorrow and said, we want a union, like, we want to have, like, advocacy for ourselves. We're going to do that through, like, joint efforts. We're going to combine. We're going to, like, our labor is being sold, usual union things. Yeah. Would HCS support a players union if it came into fruition?
It's hard to say, because there's a lot of, like, legal potential implications that I'm just not an expert on answering. I would say philosophically, like, we support players. Like, the fact that players are getting onto great teams, making a higher salary than they have in the past, like, we see that as a great thing, and we want to further players' involvement in the scene and their impact and their success. Like, when I see players going out there and buying a new car, I'm like, hey, that's success for HCS, because we help give a platform for that stuff. So that's what I would say, which I know is kind of a non-answer, but I can't really comment hard on that, because potential just like legal implications that I can't really speak to. But philosophically, again, like, players are arguably the most important part of the scene. So we support our players finding success, and we wanted, obviously, everyone to play nice and have long-term success of the scene. So
I can respect where you're coming from. I like that one thing I would say is I would like there to be some sort of advocacy route for players, like, within, like, even if it's just like, hey, like, we know some really good lawyers. If you're going to sign a contract, like, these are some HCS endorsed lawyers that, like, have your best interest in mind, or, like, just building an ecosystem. Because right now, like, when we're talking about the average Halo player that's going pro, obviously Halo skews a bit older, but we're still talking about, the new crop coming up. Like, I think Collect's like 18 years old. Like, we have a lot of like 16, 18, 19, 20-year-old pro players that are coming into the season for the first time, and they're signing contracts. And I think it's important for HCS to, like, at least be like, hey, like, we're here for you, not necessarily just for the organizations, and to provide support for players. I know that you can't like promise that, but I think that would be a great step for player health in the game.
Yeah, and I think we've done some of that, like, unofficially, like, where players will be like, hey, I'm talking to this organization or whatever, and I'm like, well, I can't give you any advice or feedback other than, like, make sure you talk to a lawyer, So I get it, and we don't get involved in any of that stuff, but we're not just going to sound players, hey, sign it, this is a great team. Like, we don't we understand, like, where, like, look, we're really happy with the teams that we have been in, but we understand as an esports industry, there's been a lot of, like, really bad and shady stuff that has taken place over the years, and Halo players have fallen victim to some of that in the past. So we're not ignorant to that. We're not turning a blind eye to it. We're just not in a position where we can be hands-on with it.
Yeah, and I can appreciate where you're coming from that. I'd say, we'll take a little sidestep, get a little bit more lighthearted for a second, because I see a lot of people shouting out Laser Me Tort in the chat. I don't know if you know who Laser Me Tort is. Do you know who Tort is, Tashi?
I feel like I've seen the name.
Okay, so Tort.
Let me pull up the chat.
He's a grinder from Halo 5. So let me tell you, this man went and got his law degree, became a lawyer, and was a 152 in Halo 5 at the same time. Shout out to Tort, because how the hell do you manage to do that? That man became a lawyer and max ranked in Halo 5. There's no shot that you're able to do that. So let's go Tort. You know, let's get some. We love Torts in the chat. Warts, whatever you want to do. Tort's great. You know, I just wanted to get the shout out there. If you guys need a lawyer and you want someone who has like your best interest in mind, Tort's probably a great option for that. This is not legal advice. Do not take it. But Tort's awesome.
Yeah. You're also not a doctor.
Yeah.
Pilot says your answers suck. Sorry, Pilot. I don't know what else you want to.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want?
Trying to hear from me.
That being said, if you're a pro player, make sure your contracts are looked at, you know, all that fun stuff. I'm going to go back to the partnership program a little bit, because we talked about the mid-tier, like a lot of the mid-tier orgs missed out, right? We're talking about the KCPs, the G1s. What can HCS offer these teams that aren't a part of the partnership program? Because right now it's really hard to justify having a roster as a mid-tier org, because season 2 kind of told them, hey, like, it's not likely you're going to get signed. We still have a lot of like top tier players that want to get in. We're not expanding too fast. It's probably going to be a long wait, but it's still important for an open ecosystem to have mid-tier organizations. What can HCS offer mid-tier organizations to help better the pot for them?
Yeah, so something we tell a lot of teams is, and this is like quote word for word, is like, hey, just because you're not partnered doesn't mean we can't work together. So there are a lot of times teams come to us with cool opportunities. They want us to share their content, you know, whatever it might be. We're open to entertaining all of those things. And if they make sense for the ecosystem, then, you know, we're interested in doing that stuff. Obviously, having skins in the game and all these official revenue opportunities are a thing that are going to have the biggest impact for these teams and matter the most. So really, I think what we can do from a studio perspective to support these teams is like have an amazing and kick-ass game like that pulls in a lot of viewers for HCS. And like, I think we do have an amazing kick-ass game. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like trolls in the chat right now, but like, obviously we have a ton of work to do, like no doubt. And the development team and everyone's like busting their butts. But from a core gameplay standpoint, like I think the consensus is largely like Halo Infinite's pretty awesome. So, you know, there's a lot more to build up on there, but you know, it needs to be, if teams aren't getting like direct revenue from like skins and whatnot, like the game needs to be exciting to watch, exciting to participate in, and feel like there's an opportunity for them to, even if they're not partnered, like find success in the scene. So obviously that's a really tall task, and but it's important, and obviously it's a shared goal that we have, because you know, we want the game to be played by as many players and competitors as possible. We want as many people watching as possible. So that's the thing that we can do that will have the biggest impact on the entire ecosystem, including those like, you know, those other teams that you mentioned.
When it comes to these teams, I guess like, okay, so like the mid tiers, I get that. It's just like, it's really hard to see like the investment like path right now for a mid-tier organization. I think obviously the game getting better is a big key part to like getting that to be a reality. And you know, I think a lot can change in the season 2 roadmap. So I think what you said was great. I just like, I hope what doesn't happen from the season 2 announcement, even if we do add these great organizations, is discourage mid-tier organizations from leaving, because I think there's a large emphasis put on having Halo be an open ecosystem, which I think has been great. I think what's really been a cool program is the fact that like if you qualify for pools, you get your flights paid for, which I think is like a big help for like some of these like lower tier, mid-tier organizations, grassroots. Like if you're good enough, you can get your flights paid for. Have you guys thought about maybe expanding that program? Because like that, I think that's the best relief that you can give to like a mid-tier organization, is like providing travel, providing lodging for these players, because that's a massive cost for these teams.
We've not talked about expanding it. We do recognize it's really important, and we're super glad that we're doing it. And we're glad that it's had the impact that it has. But it's something we'll talk about, but it's not something that we've talked about expanding.
Okay. And that's fair, you know, but I think right now that's like the biggest thing that mid-tier organizations can have, is the fact that there's like a low cost entry into Halo right now. In fact, I would go so far to say that Halo is one of the few esports where I think the top teams are probably making money right now. I think I've heard reports that like teams are making 7 figures on their skins. Like there's real money into these skins. And I guess what I'm trying to get to with that is what do you hold these partner teams to? Like what is in that long-term agreement? Like, because obviously like you're opening up a faucet for these teams that is pouring out free money with microtransactions, right? And like I don't see teams investing $1 million a year into Halo, but some of them could be getting 7 figures in team skins. What kind of long-term commitments do you have from these teams that'll keep them in the Halo ecosystem?
You're gonna see in year 2 like a very material expansion in the partnership program and the like touch points that the teams will have with the ecosystem. That was one of the things for year 1 where overall the way we think about it is like trying to create a virtuous cycle for the teams where they can cultivate and create a fan base and then monetize that fan base. I know the word monetize sounds like evil, but like this is the business of esports. Teams need to make money if they want to continue to support their players and feeling all this stuff. So that's a huge North Star for us, is like, how do we give different revenue opportunities for the teams? So in year 1, we had a solid picture of that. Year 2, you're going to see the teams investing a lot more in the ecosystem and doing more things. And that will like really show their commitment to the scene. But at the same time, giving them opportunities to earn out more money. So the hope is you'll see way more video content. You'll see teams have more presence at events. You'll see more tournaments from teams. Overall, the teams are going to feel like way more integrated into the ecosystem than they are today, which is kind of like a mixed bag, I'll say. Some are, doing a million things. Some are doing a bit less. So I think overall, you're going to see the floor for integration into the ecosystem for the teams be a bit higher than it was for year 1.
Is there, I guess, like the biggest thing for us as a community is like we feel as if there's not really a way to keep these teams accountable, right? So like an organization like FaZe through a tournament, like had a great activation, has like spent very real money picking up top tier talent. Whereas there's some teams in the league, like you said, that haven't really like met the standard of what as a community we expected out of these teams. Is there a way for HCS to be like, hey, like you need to do more, like, and this isn't acceptable, and if you don't do more, you're gonna lose your partnership? Is there a way to keep like teams accountable like that in the system right now?
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at for year 2. And I think like fans making their voice heard about that stuff, it helps the teams, because they all, like, none of the teams that we're with are here to like milk the scene. Like I mentioned earlier, they're not all in the same exact position to like invest the same amount or have booths, because it's not all the same costs for all of them. So you can't necessarily look at it as like, oh, one team is just better than another. Like from an intent and philosophical approach standpoint, like we believe in all the teams. We know they want to support the scene in a big way, but we also know it's not the same for all of them. So yeah, you can certainly make your voice heard, and teams, I'm sure, will see it. And like I mentioned, like we are kind of raising the floor for level of involvement for the teams for year 2.
I guess on the flip side of that coin, right? Hex released like a recent Optic podcast where they were talking about the Halo ecosystem, and they said right now, if there wasn't team skins in the game, Optic wouldn't be in the game. They didn't see the reason to invest. What can change in the partnership program to make that, to mitigate that? Like what can we do as a Halo esport to make it more appealing for top organizations to stay in the game?
Yeah, I think for us, that goes into a lot of what we're doing for year 2 partnership, which is building out more of that virtuous cycle that I talked about, where right now, like the biggest and really main opportunity to earn revenue is just that in-game skins. I think we're expanding that in a bigger way for year 2. And actually, you're going to see some of that later this year, with in the merch department. So, our North Star is giving teams as many opportunities to earn money and do, great, exciting things in Halo as possible. And we have a very kind of open mind and open approach about all that stuff. That's why the teams design their own skins. And that's why they have so much creative freedom in Halo. Like, we don't dictate exactly how they do things, because we want to give them the opportunities and the chance to do things the way they feel like they can be most successful in. But, for year one, that is the in-game content was obviously a huge part of the program. So it's not surprising to hear that.
So I like that like we're gonna see it in season 2.
I need to listen to that podcast, by the way. So
you should definitely.
Okay.
I guess I do a link after. I'll get you the time code where it's all at, so you can listen to it. Because
I need
also
timestamps on that, because
I will promise that I can give you just a snippet in which they talk about it, because I think it's important. And they alluded
and I do
to something.
usually listen, to be clear. Like, I think I just missed this one.
Yeah, we're gonna see you on the eavesdrop. I mean, Hex says he has an open invitation to you. You going to Dallas sometime soon? Get you on the eavesdrop.
Let me tell you, this is like, we've had 2 strikes so far. I was gonna go, and then Hex got COVID, and so I had to cancel my flight. And then I was gonna go because I was gonna go to DreamHack Dallas, and I had a horrible flight experience trying to leave New York, so that ended up not working. So 2 strikes so far, but yeah, I'm gonna be on eavesdrops as soon as I can get over to Dallas.
I like to hear it. So one thing they talked about the phase event for a little bit in the during the podcast, and they talked about how organizations they want to throw an event, but they alluded to the fact that Optic and Hitch weren't able to throw an event. Can you give like any more insight? Like, did this happen? Like, what is the process for these teams to throw an event? Like, if they come to you, say, hey, we want to throw an event, what is HCS's participation in that? What's something that would hold up an event from happening?
So it depends on the team. And I shouldn't say the team. It depends on the situation, because each situation is different. So for the phase event, they had everything basically done, and they came to us for a license and some extra support. And we were like, hey, this is a good opportunity to boost the prize pool and add some more excitement. For the Optic one, and I'm not going to go into too many details because, that's private between us and Optic, but we are all in on trying to make this Optic event happen. And I love that they are proactive in doing that. And it's been amazing to see them build out their capabilities to running tournaments and events and having that, they've picked up that arena over there in the Arlington Stadium, I should say. So I think for us, there's maybe nothing preventing it. Like, we want to do it. It just needs to be done in a way that makes sense. And I think for what was talked about in the podcast, and again, I don't have the exact conversation, but based on what you're telling me, it just didn't work out this time right now. So we're already in talks in figuring this out and making it happen. So it will happen at some point.
I guess, is there a chance? Because I think the big thing with the phase one, right, is phase came with you with the opportunity, said, hey, we want to do this. Let's make this happen. And it was a very easy yes, because everything was done ahead of time. In season 2, or I guess maybe even in season 1, do you see there more being an opportunity where you guys are a little bit more hands-on with the organization, saying, hey, we want you to throw an event. Here's what we can provide in funding. Let's work together from the start, rather than the organization doing the groundwork, the foundation work at start. Because I think it's a better experience for everyone.
That's literally
overall.
happening.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I want to hear. Hey.
Yeah, and I will say the Optic one was just a different situation from the phase. Not saying it's better or worse. It was just definitely trickier to figure out, given all the circumstances and requirements for making it happen, and which you would expect from an online event versus an in-person event. In-person events are just just a different beast entirely. So all that said, Optic have been awesome partners. We're excited to continue to partner with them. They have big ambitions in Halo, and we're all here to support it. We love it. So we're going to keep pushing for it, and we have some good conversations in the works already.
when it comes, so we talk about the partnership program in the sense of like we're adding teams to the partnership. I think we've seen a real shift in the last few years in just esports and like just Twitch culture in general, video gaming, for the influencer to pop up. Is there opportunities for individuals, for top talent, like let's say like a Frosty or a Lucid, to become a part of the partnership program, and for there to be individual things in the game? Like I really want to have a sniper skin that has like a Lucid signature or Frosty signature or insights. Like I want to help support players directly, right? And I think right now there's not really that much opportunity other than, you know, maybe watching the pros that stream who are like streamers. But there's a lot of pros that I want to support that aren't necessarily built for streaming. It's just not in the cards for them, and I want to be able to support them. Is there plans in the future for HCS to add support systems for players directly that don't necessarily get siphoned off by organizations?
So no firm plans at the moment, but it's not because we don't want to. It was actually like ideas that come up, you know, years ago during development, and I think we decided for launch to focus on teams and bring teams in, and you know, I would love to get to a point where we can have, you know, like you mentioned, like a Lucid sniper skin and whatnot. So nothing to confirm, nothing in the works or plans right now, but philosophically, like, you know, sounds awesome.
I guess this is one thing, like, for just a community perspective, right? Because like there's the three pillars of Halo competitive, right? You have the governing body, you have the organizations, and you have the community, right? What can the community be doing right now to make their presence more heard? Because I think right now a lot of what happens is people scream into the empty void of Twitter, or they try it. Like, how do we mobilize as a community to make voices heard within 343 and HCS?
So I'll give a good example, and I hope she doesn't mind me divulging this, but there's a lot of feedback that we got. I won't say a lot. There's a small bit of feedback that we got from the open bracket experience in Raleigh, and there were that group of people were like super heated and passionate about it, and we were getting tweeted at like crazy, you know, trying to people giving feedback. Hey, what the heck is up with this? Why didn't you do this? Blah 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 blah. And it's like it was really difficult to like wrap our head around and follow. And then Queen came along, was just like, hey, I've pulled all of this feedback for you in a nice, concise document, and here it is. And I was like, holy crap, like you just made our lives so much easier. And I was able then to send that to competition part of the team, and Richie and Esports Engine. And we were able to like go through the list and talk about it. And then we, you know, for the things that we felt like needed to be addressed or were super critical, we like, you know, said, okay, for the next event, let's focus on these things. And Kansas City, by all accounts, was a better experience. So like that kind of self-organization like that to kind of collect the feedback, that helps tremendously, because otherwise like we're taking a fire hose to the face. And, you know, I've been doing this for 8.5 years now. So like I have a pretty good understanding of like, hey, these are the people that are kind of the collectors of feedback and the experts, and the ones I should really be paying attention to. Like, hey, when this person has something to talk about, like, you know, that's really important, instead of like every 30 seconds someone else is just complaining about something. So that's like a ninja art that I've developed over the years, and we've developed as a studio. But anytime the community can like self-collect feedback like that, and, you know, shoot me a DM or an email, whatever it might be, like that helps tremendously.
I get that, and I think it's good for us to do that. I just think a lot of people have the frustration right now that there's not really like a feedback system within 343 to like provide feedback that is clean to you. Like, because I think a lot of people tweet on Twitter and like don't use, like, because there's not a tool for them to do anything else.
Yeah.
Which would like to be something that, you know, I think would be cool to see developed in the future.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, I think everyone's paying attention to the conversation, especially the community team. Like, they're everywhere, reading everything and collecting everything. And I'm focused more on the competitive stuff. So I'm paying attention to what our pros are saying and people watching HCS events and things like that. And then we have the support team that is taking all these tickets, and, you know, they're presenting, you know, here's what people are upset about, and here's what people have issues with the game about. So, like, you know, there is work being done there. And, yeah, I wish it didn't feel like people were just yelling into a void. And I know sometimes it's just going to have to be that way because we can't respond to everything. We can't, turn on a dime every week and be like, here's a giant update with everything that we're working on. Like, a lot of that gets collected into like community team does a lot of streams and they do these big blogs and whatnot where they share all the feedback that they've been getting. So there are moments where that happens. So yeah, I guess we just need to do a better job of, again, like closing that loop. At least I'll speak for the HCS side. I think community team does a great job.
Going back to like players and individuals within the partnership program, one thing that we've seen in this first year of 343, of HCS, that we really haven't seen in other years, at least to my knowledge, is the governing body handing out fines, handing out suspensions like we have. So like I said, we saw Royal 2 get suspended for a month, had to miss the first major. We've seen players, like all the players on Sentinels, get hefty fines for talking about that situation. We've seen a good amount of the players on Sentinels get some hefty fines, and we've seen Spartan in particular get some fines. What goes behind the process of finding players within? Okay, so I guess this is two pronged. One is HCS's leveraging or HCS's governing body only account to partnership teams? Like, can only players within partnership teams get fines? To like, what is the main factors that went determining these fines? Because from what I heard, I mean, some of the fines have been really high, and we're talking about, like substantial chunks of player salaries being affected by some of these fines. Like, what's the process that went into the fines of these players?
So you had a few questions. One is it only partnered pro teams? The answer is no. We do hold the partnered pro teams and players to a higher standard, being on a partner team. The fines are taken out of like prize pool and travel stipends and things like that. So that's the way we like execute on all of that. And for us, like we believe we're like actually super lenient. If we had a stricter lens, there'd probably be a lot more fines that have been doled out. We also understand that like, there's a lot of frustration about the game and players are just venting. And, as I said in the tweet thread earlier, like our goal is not to censor players. Like we don't ever do that. We've never fined someone for censor or like trying to censor them or like stop them from speaking their piece. And so that's why there's only been a few fines, and usually it's like for stuff that is really severe. So the stuff that we doled fines out, we felt like, okay, this is like really, really damaging, crossing the line, hurts the league, hurts the player, hurts the team. Like it's just like terrible behavior that, it's just unhealthy for the ecosystem. So that's ultimately kind of the why behind it. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is like, where do you get to the amount, right?
In the code of, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Right, because like I know that there was like it's like there's an X amount, like I think it's like $2,000, but then it's like $2,000 like per infraction. So like they had multiple infractions and it could be like $6,000 like at some points. I guess my biggest thing is, do you think that's too high? Like, do you think right now the fine amounts, like the amount of money that are used, like that are being fined out, do you think it's too much? Like, do you guys think you're right on? Like, is there any like feedback that you've gotten that you're like, okay, maybe we could tone it down, or maybe it wasn't enough? Like, where's your opinion on like the amount that players are getting fines?
I think it's been justified so far. We do everything by what's laid out in the code of conduct, and there's a range based on the severity and the different types of infractions, and they are added up, and that's what the competition side of the league does. And we do things by the book. We don't we try to remove all of our potential bias. Like for example, like there were some personal attacks sent at me, and I removed myself from all the conversations around fines and penalties and all that stuff. I wasn't feeling a certain way about it, but I knew like I'm just going to remove myself for any like unconscious bias or anything like that. So we think we've been very lenient and very fair. We understand the penalties have been severe, but we think they match the the severity of the behavior.
And I agree with that. And I just want to be able to get it out there. We got one last segment that I want to get into. Let's talk about the Halo API. Right now, there's been an effort to go on called SaveHaloDotAPI. They say that they're going to close their doors on July 31st. I don't think it's a mystery that a lot of the competitive Halo community runs through a lot of the websites that Halo.api supports. The main one being like Halo Data Hive, where we're able to keep up with scrims and tournament results. Is there any efforts being made from 343 right now to help save Halo.api or to release an API of their own? Because when those websites go down, there really isn't any middleman to catch them.
Yeah, and this has been the kind of story since before even the game came out. And we talked to Autocode, who are the company that kind of manages that, is long-term, like our own API is the solution here. And, we have one for Halo 5, we have one for Halo Wars 2, and they're awesome. And, I would say from the esports side, like we truly believe in all of that. And I don't mean to say, I didn't mean that as in like the rest of the studio doesn't. Obviously, like everyone's kind of sees the benefit. That's why there exists ones for Halo 5 and Halo Wars 2. But we ultimately like agree with the community that this is like having an API is a great thing. It enables all these different websites. I mean, like we held contests for the Halo 5 one in the past. So like we're in on it. And I would say long term, when we're hopefully able to get our own API stood up, like we have bigger ideas and ambitions than what the community is talking about right now. It's unfortunate that, Autocode and Halo API has to kind of shutter their doors, it seems like. But for, it's kind of laid out in the blog, like we're not in a position to be able to fund their efforts to continue this. And there are, again, like compliance reasons with privacy that we need to be thoughtful of. And we need to like make sure that we as a company are abiding by the laws. So, our hope is that we can get an API up and running in the future. I've made no promises as to timing or when that could be. But we want to in the future. So we understand the importance. We definitely feel for the community and the developers, if this indeed goes away. But that's just the reality of the situation. And I hope we can get our own API in the future up.
I guess like I totally get where you're coming from when it comes to the privacy. And I get that like you can't necessarily support like Halo.api right now, but there's a lot of the community that runs through Grassroots right now, right? And you talked about like not being able to support some of them, but like is there an avenue in which some of these organizations and smaller but very useful things the competitive Halo community can go and search for funding within the Halo ecosystem right now? Because right now it feels like a closed loop between like you got HCS, you got your partner teams, there's like money that's running between that, and then the only other way right now to necessarily make money if you're a part of that competitive Halo ecosystem is to win tournaments, right? Where can we see some is there opportunities right now for HCS maybe to provide opportunities for smaller websites that provide opportunities and much needed services to the Halo community to find funding?
So for us, it's our approach is always how we can try to create opportunities rather than like pay for things directly and pay for services. And the reason is not because we don't think they're valuable or worth money. It's because, our charter as a team is to run the HCS League and all the events, and that's where we're spending our dollars. So for us, we also need to just think about how we do things in a sustainable way. And if ultimately like someone else's business is just literally tied to like the money that we are paying for something, like that's not really a sustainable business. So the business model doesn't always add up or make sense for some of these websites or some of these smaller organizations. And, sometimes we can figure out ways to help support. So one example is like the Halo 5 send off that Sentinels did. Like we funded that and that made sense for us. And we gave Sentinels money and, they put on this awesome event. So sometimes things like that make sense. And we always try to find opportunities like that. But the reality is like they don't always exist. And, we also have like very core priority things that we need to focus on. Like, we've gotten a lot of feedback about the roadmap and we have a lot of feedback about the game itself. Like ultimately, like none of the like ancillary stuff on top of that matters if we don't have this like foundation super rock solid. And we have more work to do on that, again, like pry one stuff right now. So I know it's not the best news and it might be disheartening for a lot to hear, but it's just you can't do everything all at once. And sometimes that means unfortunate things like the .api stuff happens or teams exit the scene or whatever it might be, right? So that's just kind of the reality of the situation.
Tashi, been really great to have you on. Is there anything that I haven't asked or something that you really wanted to clear up, want to get off your chest? Like, I mean, this is the perfect opportunity as we start to wrap.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get tweets about like, oh, you guys don't care, or how much do you really care, or like weird things like that. And like I try to remain civil about all this, but we really take that as like a slap in the face, honestly. Like, I can speak for this team in this studio. Like, we care deeply about the community, the game, the franchise, the work that we do, the effort that we put in, and ultimately like the quality of the product. And I don't want to like come off defensive because I know as a fan and a player perspective, you see certain things that are not good or not great, and you're like, well, the only thing I can think of as to why is because they don't give a shit. And I can say with confidence that like that is absolutely not true. Like if people didn't give a shit, they wouldn't be like working on this stuff. And I can speak for the HCS team and saying like everyone on the team is like super dedicated to this ecosystem, to this league, to this community. We don't have egos. Everything we do is for the betterment of the ecosystem and the fan and the players, the franchise, the community. Like I said earlier, like there's not a goal of like make Tashi happy or make whoever on the team happy with these things. Like literally our only North Star is like growing this ecosystem and growing the community and making the most kick-ass like entertainment product that we can. And I have to say objectively, because we there's a lot of back padding in esports, and I don't think I do enough on behalf of the HCS team. I think we have fucking crushed it this year. I think HCS this year with Halo Infinite is the best Halo Esports product there ever has been. I don't even think it's close, honestly. And we obviously have a lot of work to do. There's things that are not great. We're going to continue to improve and work on those. But I'm like super proud of this team, super proud of this ecosystem and all of our partners for how good this product is, and very thankful for all the support from the players and the viewers and everyone who's kind of tuned in, and all of the like other organizations that have, without partnership, like LVT, like really stepped up to support this community out of like passion and love for the game. So we are like proud of HCS as a product. We think it's awesome. We have obviously a lot more work to do and more to improve, but thus far, for launching basically a new league with a new game, we think we've done an outstanding job. But and our, right, what I'm basing that on is like the metrics of success that we measure. But again, like, we have more work to do. Anyway, I kind of rambled for a bit, but you gave me my soapbox, so I went for it.
I love you being on your soapbox. One thing I will say, a lot of people probably like misinterpret what you said. I do think HCS right now, of what you guys have done, is like the North Star of like Halo for me, because like there's a lot of things wrong with the video game right now. HCS is one of the few things in my life that's not wrong. Like every week I get to watch it. I get to watch like Halo competitions. I get to cast a little bit. It's a lot of fun. If you're like just a player that wants to get better, like there's opens, there's pros, like there's a lot of stuff that you can compete in. When it comes to the tournaments, if you go to a LAN, it's pretty hype. Like when it comes to like what's going on in Halo Esports, it's pretty great. Obviously we have our problems. Obviously, like we're gonna like you said, season 2 sounds a lot more promising. I appreciate you coming on, Tashi. You were talking about, hey, you know, like LVT, we step up and we've been doing a lot of things. Did you know, Tashi, that we started a Patreon? So, you know,
I didn't know this. What's the link?
Check it out. Yeah, guys, exclamation mark Patreon. Yo, Tashi, I'm going to give you a little soapbox. Go give a shout out to our Patreon guys. Go check it out. If you like this interview and you want to see more things like this, because Tashi, I'm sure we'll probably have you back on at some point when the Halo community starts to blaze a fire again. And
no, we got to do it more regularly so that it doesn't burn too bright.
Once a month, I'll get you. You can come on, talk about anything you want to do. We'll make it happen.
I don't want to commit to once a month, but I do want to commit to more regularly, because I have to also say, like, you are a great interviewer. I think you're fair. You ask good questions. I also appreciate that the community, and I saw this on Twitter, were like holding pitchforks to you, and they're like, "You better not let him off the hook." And you were like, "You know what? I'm asking good questions. I'm staying fair to the community."
Bless you.
You've done a really good job, and you know, I trust you as an interviewer. And there's a lot of people I don't trust as interviewers, because I have gotten like crazy curveball stuff, and like that's just not a good situation to be in. And people confuse that with like holding me to the fire, but it's just unprofessional, and it doesn't give a good platform for a good response, which is ultimately what the community wants. Anyway, long story short, I think you've done a good job. I'd be happy to come back and do these more regularly.
Hey, and you know what, Tashi? If you got $2.22 sitting in the pocket, burning a hole, well, you can support us on the Patreon, guys. Twitch, they take 50% of our money. We appreciate the subs. It's awesome. If that's the way you want to support, go ahead and do it. Patreon, they take 10%. We get to keep a lot more money, and that means the money goes a lot further. So please, if you are wanting to support, or if you want to get some of that LVT merch, well, the Patreon, there's a way merch now. Yeah, you know, there's a hoodie tier. You join, you can go do that. If you want to, if you got $1,000 HCS, you know what I'm saying? You got $1,000 burning in your pocket. We got executive producers positions as well. You guys have no idea how far that would go. So if you wanna support, please, for the love of God, come support us, because it's all passion over here. Our casters, when it comes to the Open and Pro series, it is all just volunteer basis right now. Obviously, like our shows like Monday, Tuesday, we get our people taken care of. You know what I'm saying? We want to make sure that, you know, when we are able to help the community, some of these grassroots casters. But please, if you want to support what we do, if you enjoyed the interview, if you enjoy the Open series that we had, I mean, goddamn, we were live for 11 hours today, guys. Like, please help us in any way we can. Shout out to everyone that's a part of this thing. There's a lot of people I don't get love, like Louis in the back. The channel's named after him. He's hardly ever on camera. That man's doing God's work back there. Mr. Snow keeping us up with the stats. Not only does he does the stats for us, he also been doing the stats for HCS. You know, hey, Tashi, he was over there. I saw some incredible stats in Kansas City when they were like, they were like, hey, like when this happens, X% of the time they win. I was like, damn. That's actually a sick stat. I've heard good
feedback from the commentators at events too. They're like, hey, he's been killing it. Mr.
Snow's the man over there. We have all our great casters. 90's one of the best observers we've ever had. So if you like the way that we observe,
shout out Brandon.
Yeah, 90 Night, Brandon, all those guys, that's great. The Patreon's the best way to do it. If you want to sub to the channel, that's great. If not, we're going to bombard you with ads whenever you watch, because guys, it's time for our people that are involved in what we do today to like be able to have a sustainable lifestyle while doing it. We're working our hardest. We have some great things in the works. Money Tuesday coming up soon, guys. We're going to announce the teams really soon. July 19th, I believe. It's not this Tuesday, but the next coming Tuesday. G Fuel Partnership, $2,000 on the line. Last Spartan standing, undercard, main card. Come on out. You guys got to be checking all this stuff out. I promise you, we're going to have the top of the top pros going going out. Tashi, I better see you in the chat. That's what I'm saying. Money Tuesday, G Fuel partnership, alongside of Maturino. Guys, these activations help us continue doing what we're doing. Please support everything that we've been doing thus far. And I'm going to give the Patreon one last plug. If you want to be cool, if you want to be like a Chad, if you want to be the best esports consumer you possibly can be, please help support the Patreon. I'm going to tell you guys, everyone who is a content creator / like someone that's doing something in the community, please start a Patreon. Let's start making sure that we can all help support each other. I'm going to get off my soapbox for now. Thank you guys for coming on out.
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah, go for it. I just
saw Command Station giving some love in the chat. I just want to give a shout out to the ladies in the HCS and esports community. Absolutely unbelievable the way they've all stepped up to self-operate and support, from the content creators to the competitors. So we love to see it. Thank you, ladies. You're doing a kick-ass job, and you make this a better ecosystem and community for everyone. So much appreciation, much love.
That's a great one. And I don't want to one up the ladies, because the ladies are absolutely incredible. But I'm going to do this just this one time, Tashi, because I'm very close to 1,000 followers on Twitter. I'm going to spam my Twitter in the chat. If you like the interview, go follow my Twitter, because I want to get to 1,000. Bigger number, better person. You know what I'm saying? Get me to a K. That's sick. Other than that, guys, that does it for the show. So go check it out. If you don't follow me, please follow me. I want to get to 1,000 followers. This is my Vayne moment, guys. Let me have it. That being said, guys, that does it for the interview. Thank you for coming on, Tashi. It was an absolute blast.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do this again. Absolutely. Let's do this again.
I'm in.